Next up, a special announcement from Detroit Mobility Lab. Please welcome Chris Thomas.
Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Detroiters and Michiganders, thank you all for being here, very sincerely. Thank you for showing up. It is truly a pleasure to be here today. I'm Chris Thomas, the co-founder and president of Detroit Mobility Lab. In a few minutes' time, I will have the distinct honor of making the most important announcement of this year's show. Now, you might ask, given the many announcements that have taken place from this stage over the last 2 days, how can that be? It's a good question. It's a fair question. It's because the announcement will define not who we are, but what we're going to become. You might also ask, isn't that a little self-serving, Chris? That's also a fair question. The answer is maybe a little bit, but more importantly, it will serve the people of our city and our state and our country in distinct and immeasurable ways. Founded last year, the Detroit Mobility Lab is an organization committed to the future of mobility and Detroit's place in it. We believe that building the mobility talent infrastructure necessary to shape the future of the mobility sector is a key part of that commitment. And our goal is to create one of the world's foremost mobility technology ecosystems here in the city of Detroit. Simply put, we are committed to moving aggressively and doing everything possible to ensure Detroit has the talented men and women it will require to compete in the global mobility sector. 2 years ago, I had the distinct honor of standing on this same stage and providing a wide-ranging overview of the future of mobility. I ended those remarks with the following call to arms. Detroit's past and present has positioned us perfectly to drive the future of mobility, not just in our city or in our state or our country, but around the world. However, it is not our birthright. It is not our birthright. We have an opportunity to be one of the global hubs for mobility, but we have to act now, or the opportunity will pass us by. I believe that even more today than I did then. And our team at the Detroit Mobility Lab, alongside our friends at BCG, have discovered exactly what it is that we need to do to ensure we grab this opportunity with both hands. Create the Michigan Mobility Institute. The Michigan Mobility Institute, the first initiative of the Detroit Mobility Lab, will be a brick-and-mortar educational institute with the mission of educating professionals and tradespeople with an artificial intelligence, robotics, cybersecurity, and other fields that will be vital to ensuring Detroit's relevance as a global center for future mobility. It is a big idea. There is a tremendous amount of work that we have to do. And we knew that the most important factor in getting the Michigan Mobility Institute off the ground would be finding an amazing leader. Someone who had the right background, an understanding of the seriousness of this opportunity, and a passion for mobility, and a passion for Detroit. I'm excited to report today for the first time that we found her. And for the first time on stage, I'm proud to introduce and announce my friend and colleague, Jessica Robinson, as the first executive director of the Michigan Mobility Institute. Please join me in welcoming Jessica to the stage.
Well, thank you, Chris. And thanks for everyone for your warm support of this announcement today. I am thrilled to be making my role with the Michigan Mobility Institute official and believe that the time is now to accelerate our industry's focus on talent. As Chris mentioned, when we started this journey last year, it came after a series of conversations with some of you in the room, catalyzed us into action. And at the time, many of you also asked us what exactly it was that we were doing. And we acknowledged at that point in time that we did not have all of those answers. We just knew that we needed to start the conversation. And yet, as some of the findings which I'll share with you today started to come in, our initial hypothesis was indeed validated. There is not just a mobility gap, but indeed a potential crisis looming for this entire industry. And we also heard relief that finally someone was willing to roll up their sleeves and focus on this important effort. And perhaps, most humbling of all, We heard that we were making traction not just because of what we were focusing on, but because of who was involved. And as we had conversations about what would come next and where we wanted to go from here, we realized that the decision was right in front of us. And so I'm honored to have the opportunity to step forth today and begin to lead. Now, I'll be honest, at first glance, when we started our research and started to pull together some of these numbers, we weren't really sure that they were significant. After all, in this industry, we talk about production runs in the tens of thousands. We talk about quarterly earnings in the billions of dollars. And we talk about things like the global addressable market for ride sharing in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And then we realized that that gap in our understanding is something that many of you share with us. And it's because, simply, we do not talk about these numbers at an industry at this level. And so it also validated for us the importance of having this conversation on this stage with this global audience at this critical moment in time. I've been part of groundbreaking organizations in next generation mobility for the past 10 years. And I've seen firsthand the potential for connected vehicles and what happens when smartphones arrive in everyone's hands. We know that it's an enabler of mobility services, and I saw this during my time at Zipcar. I've recruited and mentored some of startups working in cutting edge of mobility during my time at Techstars. And while there, I also got to peer inside Fortune 50 companies who are facing existential crisis in their industries. And most recently, I was an early leader at Ford Smart Mobility as part of a group focused on a new customer base as the automaker transformed itself from a manufacturer into a mobility services company. And during this time, I've seen one thing very clearly, and that's with the rapid evolution of technology. But indeed, nobody can predict the future of this industry. But I can stand here to say with absolute certainty that we are facing the most significant disruption this industry has ever seen. And it's driven by change in three key areas: the commercialization of autonomous vehicles, the increase of connectivity, and the rise of electrification. But this disruption is also social, and it's driven by globalization and the rise of sharing services. And it's also driven by a change in the fundamental way that we do work. Next generation mobility requires a different type of person. It trained in a different approach to tackle a very different set of technology and business problems. Quite simply, to support our own future, we need new talent that's different from today. Today, our organizations are home to single-focus engineers trained in disciplines like mechanical or engineering, IT deployment, and software development. But for the future, we need cross-functional tinkerers who are comfortable in disciplines such as data, AI, robotics, cybersecurity, but who also understand systems thinking and are willing to take a hands-on approach to getting work done. And we don't just need a different type of training. We must accelerate the base of people who are receiving these new skills. Recently published work from the Boston Consultant Group and the Detroit Mobility Lab adds an important level of detail to these themes. We've developed new research with a specific focus on new jobs within mobility. And our initial hypothesis was validated, and what we found is critical. Self-driving, connectivity, and autonomy will create more than 100,000 new jobs within the mobility industry in the next 10 years. And we learned that we need 30,000 of those people to have a degree focused specifically on computers and software development. The demand for these types of skills will outstrip the current projected supply by 6 times. That's 6x the number of advanced level degree engineers that we need to fuel this mobility growth. And importantly, this is not happening in a vacuum. Other industries, traditional tech, are coming after the same talent. And turning for a minute to non-degree employment, we know that these same technology trends are creating for opportunities for skilled trades. There will be a need for 1,000 workers in the next decade who will work as AV and EV technologists and as safety drivers. And there will be many more still beyond these numbers who will work as fleet maintenance techs and in AV remote support centers. Developing this talent locally will be key for any city looking to become a global mobility hub. And many, in fact, are already doing this. Take, for example, Montreal, which has quickly arrived on the scene as a global leader for cybersecurity and AI. The well-known relationships in Silicon Valley between Stanford and the community drive entrepreneurship. And they've not just boosted tech, it's also led many of the traditional automakers to locate their R&D centers there in Silicon Valley. And Pittsburgh, home to Carnegie Mellon, has quickly put itself on the map as a global leader for robotics. If Detroit wants a place at this table, we must acknowledge this critical juncture in time. And for all of us in this room, the work ahead is not optional. Now, it's not to say that here in Michigan we haven't made investments and progress in kicking off initiatives to develop talent. In fact, we have. We have world-leading educational institutions, universities here in the region, and we have cutting-edge testing facilities for connected and autonomous vehicles. But we need to do more. We need to do it faster, and we must choose to focus. So let me turn now to the Michigan Mobility Institute and how we plan to bridge that skills gap. Our goal is to be the leading industry-backed talent development entity focused on the future of mobility. In focusing on new talent, we want to bring the best and brightest in local and global talent to provide industry-relevant training for readily employable workers. We'll also focus on retraining because many in our industry will need access to education and the new skills required for new mobility. And lastly, we'll develop executive training to provide current and future leaders the necessary skills, not just to manage new technology, but also workforce transformation. Through applied short-term and long-term research, the Michigan Mobility Institute will become a global leader in attracting the world's premier researchers who are eager to develop and commercialize their technologies right here in our own backyard. And will enable skilled trades development by partnering with and supporting local community colleges and workforce training centers to develop new curriculum. And we're very excited to partner with the growing Detroit-based ecosystem to work directly with government leaders to improve the awareness and perception of Michigan as an attractive home for mobility endeavors. Now, you might be asking yourself whether the Michigan Mobility Institute is replicating existing efforts. And it's a fair question which we asked ourselves too. But most importantly, we asked you and your peers here in this room in the dozens and dozens of interviews that we held to understand and quantify this problem. And we heard a resounding answer. No, no, we do not. No, we cannot find the talent that we need. No, potential candidates do not understand what a career in this industry could mean for them. And no, there are simply not enough people entering the pipeline and staying in it for our future. And our work with BCG demonstrated clearly that there's a need for something else, and that's for highly specialized mobility training with an advanced degree. And that's why I'm excited to announce here today that the Michigan Mobility Institute plans to create the first of its kind Master of Mobility degree. And together with select university partners, we will found strong support for a 9 to 12-month program in a degree like this that would better educate folks in systems-level understanding of key technologies like software development, AI, and data. Students gaining their Master of Mobility will have a hands-on learning experience through internships, apprenticeships, or industry projects similar to those we see in business schools today. And we're exploring the potential to offer joint degrees so students can pursue a Master of Mobility alongside other coursework with local schools. These new graduates will be purpose-trained to lead next-generation mobility. So as context for this change here, I want you to think for a minute about the types of materials that we use in our products and services today. At first, and not that long ago, craftsmen controlled horses with leather bridles and built carriages from wood. Internal combustion engines and gasoline brought automobiles to the masses. Aluminum made our vehicles lighter and more efficient. And silicon chips turned cars into computers on wheels. But the new materials that will be used in the future of mobility, they consist of things like LiDAR, sensors, algorithms, and most importantly, the ideas about how all of those things come together. And remember, just as with steam engines came mechanical engineers, so too with the birth of the rocket and space exploration came the aerospace engineer. With next generation mobility, we will have a new type of talent, and that's the mobility engineer. Now, given that the home of the North American Auto Show is here in Detroit, I want to acknowledge an important and outstanding question that hasn't been addressed yet today. And it's important for those of us who are in the room who are Detroiters. So I'm going to focus on you for a minute. And that's in the potential for positive impact on members of community, many of whom are locked out today from the benefits of the technology innovations and the great jobs from the technology that you see all around us here on the show floor today. As a state and as a city, we've made tremendous strides in investing in youth and STEAM education. But at this moment now, the Michigan Mobility Institute can make a difference locally. And that's by creating an opportunity for Detroiters to be some of the first people in the world trained in these new skilled trades jobs. And it's an opportunity for employers to engage with the diverse talent base that they so desperately need. And most importantly, there's an opportunity for this talent to contribute to a new virtuous cycle as people take jobs at manufacturers and suppliers. They leave to start their own companies. They become suppliers themselves. They get acquired, they teach, they invest, and they'll do it all again. And it's our strong hope and strong preference that we can bring Detroiters first through these programs. Just imagine the impact if a sizable majority of a graduating class were to stay in Detroit, join local companies, or start their own. That would have a lasting and catalytic impact on the local economy. Both the magnitude and the urgency then for addressing this mobility gap are clear, and we've seen it in recent headlines. Graduates are not staying in Michigan. The companies that are investing in a big way in their future are opening R&D centers in other cities, and those other cities are watching. But we also see signs of hope, including this recent survey which suggests that Detroit is poised to grow again as a future tech hub. So, for the future of Detroit, the future of the industry, and the future of our leadership in both, we find ourselves on a global stage today in the world spotlight. And I ask a simple question: where will you choose to go from here? I'm all in. And it's our hope that this stage becomes a springboard. Our effort to date has benefited tremendously from the partnership with BCG, early funding contributions, and input directly from industry experts, many of here today. Over the course of the next few months, we'll be building a coalition of partners who believe in this vision and want to be part of closing the mobility gap. Simply, we do not have the luxury of time to wait to get started. The Michigan Mobility Institute is open for business. You can reach me at jessica@michiganmobilityinstitute.org. So let's build something great together. Thank you.